to your family.
Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining today's panel. My name is Georgie Kirsten. I am the co-chair of the programming committee for PRSA Detroit. Thank you all for joining to learn something about wartime reporting from members of the media who are covering the war in Ukraine. We're joined by several reporters and communicators inside Ukraine who will share some of the challenges they've encountered and strategies they've leveraged to report accurately from within Ukraine. Just a few housekeeping items for those on the call. Please drop your questions in the chat throughout the program. We'll cover as many as possible at the end. Typically, it will end around 12:45, so we still have 15 minutes or so to answer all of those questions. As usual, we will keep the Zoom open for a little while following the program in case anyone would like to stick around for some casual networking with our panelists. We definitely encourage that. And before we begin today's panel discussion, I will read PRSA's antitrust statement, which is something we read before all PRSA events and meetings. PRSA's policy is to comply fully and strictly with all federal and state antitrust laws. Meetings and programs held under the auspices of PRSA must be conducted in a manner that avoids the fact or appearance of conduct that may violate the antitrust laws. Participants are not to discuss industry-wide or individual company prices, current or projected, or matters relating to pricing such as costs, profits, contractual terms and conditions, wages, salaries, market allocation, market shares, sales, or clients' customers, or other competitively sensitive information. Compliance with the antitrust laws is a requirement for PRSA membership, and responsibility for compliance rests with each member. Participants in PRSA meetings and programs have an obligation to terminate any discussion, seek legal counsel's advice, or if necessary, terminate any meeting if the discussion might be construed to raise any antitrust risks. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Janine Krasicky-Sadaj, a Ukrainian American. Janine helps support the Tell the Truth campaign that began in Ukraine. She is president of J9 Media Solutions and is a strategic communications counselor with 30 years of experience in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. J9 helps organizations educate, inspire, and connect with key audiences using strategic communications, creative storytelling, and relationship building. J9 counsels and serves nonprofits and mission-based organizations in arts, education, and health and human services, as well as automotive, manufacturing, technology, and professional services. She has a bachelor's degree in PR with an emphasis in marketing from Wayne State University and is on the board of directors of the PRSA Detroit chapter. She's also a member of the Leadership Detroit Class 27, Public Relations Society of America, Solo PR Pro Premium, Smart PR Inner Circle, Nonprofit Leadership Lab Village, and the Automotive Press Association. Now I'll hand it over to Janine so she can introduce our wonderful panelists who have so graciously agreed to partake in this discussion today. Janine, please take it away.
Thank you for the introduction, Georgie. I appreciate it. I'm honored to moderate this important discussion today about the challenges of wartime reporting in Ukraine. As Georgie mentioned, I'm Ukrainian American, and this war has been troubling me since it started. I'm glad to be able to do something tangible to assist communicators and reporters in Ukraine. By pulling together this program, I feel a little less helpless and a little bit more helpful. And I appreciate all they're doing to tell the truth in Ukraine and to the world. We have a great panel today of Ukrainians that will help tell their story of what they're doing to try to tell the truth to the world. And then we also have someone here that is in America that is helping with getting supplies to Ukraine and its refugees so that they can have something that they need as they're displaced around the world. First, I'll introduce Antonina Ria. She's a PR specialist at Wantent, an IT company, and has worked in communications for more than 7 years. She is also an open data advocate and is currently volunteering as a part of a non-official group of Ukrainian PR and communications leaders collaborating to tell the truth, to help journalists learn the truth and accurately tell stories about the Ukraine war. I met her through the Michael Smart Inner Circle program, and over the past few weeks have helped populate their media list that's on, a special thing that we can all access to help connect them with reporters that are here and around the world to tell the truth about what's happening in Ukraine in reality. Our second panelist hasn't joined us yet, but Lyubomira Murskyj is a video producer and editor who serves as editor at the investigative media outlet Lives TiVo Info. She has worked in media since 2005 and specializes in economic journalism in energy and heavy industry. She is the co-author of a cycle of international investigations about Russian business, Ukrainian politician Viktor Medvedev, I'm gonna not pronounce his name right, but Medvedev, and received the highest award of the National Competition of Investigative Journalism in 2021. She is a two-time winner of the Press Vanny Business Award in the category Electricity. Currently, she is reporting stories about the war from hotspots in the Kyiv region. Unfortunately, she's in a spot where her connection may be difficult. So what we're going to try to do is just welcome her when she arrives and add her as a panelist. So she'll be joining us hopefully soon. Our third panelist is Pavlo Novikov, a journalist with more than 20 years of experience. He is a host and presenter at Radio NV in Kyiv. He has worked for Internews, the News Channel, the BBC, and Radio Liberty. He is a volunteer at Charity Tuner, an NGO working on transparency and trust standards in the nonprofit sector of Ukraine. Currently, he is part of a special nonstop radio marathon informing listeners about the situation in Ukraine. Our fourth panelist is Mykola Murskyj, chair of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. He earned his master in public policy from Harvard University in 2017, writing his dissertation on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. He has won a U.S. Presidential Management Fellow with the Department of Homeland Security headquarters in Washington, D.C., as well as the U.S. Department of Justice Criminal Division's Office of International Affairs. Since January of this year, he has been a lecturer in the program in ethics, politics, and economics at the Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv, Ukraine. Murskyj also holds master's degrees in physics from MIT and from the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics. Now let's get to the program. Antonina, can you tell us how your job has changed with the start of the war?
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you, Janine and PRSA for this meeting and the space where we can talk about Ukraine now in such a difficult time. And before the war, I was a PR specialist in an IT company, Wantent, which you mentioned. It develops an interesting product, like AI platform where you can analyze the emotion states of consumers. And our mission was to help film and TV industry to gain more quality content. But since the morning of 24th of February, when I saw the smoke through the window because of Russian missiles, I started to communicate about totally different topics. And now in my list, there are such topics as humanitarian catastrophe and needs of green channels, urge business to stop working with and in Russia, donations to support the people, military support, and ask to close the sky over Ukraine, violence of Russian propaganda and the occupied territories, and so on. Because we really urgently need the information about all these topics, and we need to inform the society about this. And currently, I'm volunteering with the colleagues, helping the media to know the truth about Ukraine, like from the ground. And thanks to the head of PR at also IT company of Ukraine, Makpo, Yulia Petrik, a year ago, she invited me to the group with PR specialists who work with the international projects. And when the war started, it was very easy to unite between each other, like to make this cooperation and start to work with the international medias. And we call ourselves like PR army. Because we are also fighting in the international informational space, and we will have a normal job schedule, and the rest maybe already after the war.
Well, thank you for all you're doing. I appreciate everything you're doing. And what we're going to do toward the end of the chat is we will add a link to the area where journalists that are watching can actually sign up to get information about the war through you and connect with stories that are happening on the ground. Pavlo, do you want to talk a little bit about how your job has changed too?
Yes, my work is changed because I am in evacuation. But before we start the discussion, I need to give you just 3 points we need to rethink and reassign. That's my point. So first of all, this is the first war which is going 100% online and on air. You have been seeing that pictures and video, but this is not the last war on the earth. We need to know, we need to learn as a journalist to deal with the modern wars. So the second one is that we need to rethink even the standards of journalism, because I think there is no space to be impartial between the raper and the victim. So we need also to take our, as media, responsibility for the global process of stupidization, as I say, of the audience. And we have seen the TV programs where the something like astrologist is like opposing to the scientists, but let's think the earth is not flat and Russia is an aggressor. And the third one, we need to rethink the roles of Ukraine and its partners, because Ukraine is not the victim. Yes, we are the victims, but Ukraine and the Ukrainians are not only the victims, we are the survivors. The help you provide, the partners are providing to Ukraine is not the charity, is the investment. And that's the crucial point of what I'm saying. And so all of our lives in the world have been changed because of this war globally. Even if you didn't expect or didn't agree with the changes, you must take it. We must take it. So there is a little space between the democracy and the evil empire. And that's our front lines in Kharkiv, Mariupol, Bucha, and many other cities. And those front lines are really the deadlines. We do understand that as a media persons, what is the deadline? But we in Ukraine do have the deadlines, and we make the stories using the deadlines of our media. That I'm saying as a person who was working for BBC, for Radio Europe, Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and for other for many other international media. We do know what are the deadlines, but we need to think what are the deadlines now. And that's question about rethinking is also connecting with the African proverb. Many small people in many small cities made many small things and have changed the face of the world. That was painted of the remainings of the Berlin Wall. I have seen that. That's what we are doing as a journalists, as a civil activists. So 3 points: rethinking of impartialism, of the standards of journalism, rethinking of the role of the Ukraine and its partners, and rethinking of our future, because there is no past. The life has been changed for everyone. 25% of the people will face the hunger because of lack of grains exported from Ukraine. There is no neutral point in the world now. So we as a journalists will need to rethink our basements also. That's my point for the start.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much, Pavlo. Mykola, I know that you're not reporting as a journalist, but I'm sure your job has changed a bit since the war started too. Can you tell us a little bit of what your pivot's been?
Sure. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for the invitation to be here today. I really appreciate it. Like you said, my name is Mykola Murskyj. I'm the chairman of the Ukrainian American Crisis Response Committee of Michigan. We are basically a coordinating body for the Ukrainian American organizations, individuals, professional associations that are working to help Ukrainians defend their neighborhoods and defend our, American and European values. So we have efforts in many different directions. We have a working group that's focusing on collecting medical aid and getting it to Ukraine as soon as possible. So medical supplies, tourniquets, hospital equipment, portable x-ray machines, all that stuff. We have a group that's collecting humanitarian aid for refugees, for orphans, and for those who have been victimized in any way by the war and need food, clothing, that kind of a thing. We have a working group that's focusing on media relations, which I'll speak to more in a second. A working group for government outreach and government relations, and making sure that our legislative and executive branch officials know that there's a lot of Ukrainian Americans here in Michigan that care very deeply about this issue. And there's a lot of non-Ukrainians to whom this issue is extremely important. We have 8 or 9 working groups like that are, doing their part to make sure that our community here, that we as Michiganders are doing whatever we can to help Ukraine defend itself and alleviate the suffering that the people are undergoing in Ukraine. So that's a little bit about kind of like what we do. We try to work as closely as we can with folks that are on the ground in Ukraine. So our Antonina and Mr. Novikov, I would love to get your contact information so that way we can stay in touch afterwards and help spread information and spread the truth about what's going on. On the PR front, there have been some difficulties that perhaps maybe this group might be able to help out with. So, for example, a lot of us have heard that there were rumors that Polish MiG fighter jets from the Soviet era would be transferred to Ukraine. And this deal kind of fell through, and it's unclear where it stands right now, whether those fighter jets from Poland will be given to Ukraine, and then the US would backfill that order and give Poland American fighter jets. The media ecosystem and the public discourse around this in the United States very quickly evolved into, do Ukrainians know how to fly MiGs? Do the Ukrainians have enough pilots? Do the armaments match? Are they the right standardization system? That kind of thing. And although we had answers to all of these questions, and the answers were like, yep, it would work, it'd be fine, they know how to fly the planes, we had a very difficult time breaking out into the media, not into the media, but just like into the public discourse and saying like, look, yes, this would work. It would be a 2-week transition, and that's it. And so that's just one example of the kinds of like PR troubles that we have had. It's kind of, it's frustrating, but I think that, I mean, it's very understandable that like there aren't a lot of resources, detailed resources on what's going on in Ukraine that are written in English. And so a lot of the same news stories kind of get covered by every single media outlet. And it doesn't really, those are not necessarily sometimes the most important stories or what's actually kind of salient in people's minds in Ukraine, or even in the minds of our government officials in Washington that are kind of trying to help Ukraine negotiate its way out of all this. So I would certainly recommend that following Ukrainian sources, some of them are in English, like the Kyiv Independent, KYIV Independent, is an excellent source out of Ukraine's capital, and everything's in English. And I mean, I personally trust them. I know some of the folks that work there, and I know that they produce a lot of reliable content and information. Maybe Ms. Ria or Mr. Novikov could give more examples of that. But I think that it's important for us to remember that just because we are talking here in the US on the front pages of our newspapers about topic A, that doesn't mean that that's actually what's most important and what's going on in Ukraine and what the conversation and discourse there is like. So I would certainly recommend like engaging as in any way that you can with the discourse in Ukraine.
Sure.
Yeah, one of the reasons for that also is that Ukrainians tend to be, this is not the first time Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. The first time that somebody ruling in what is now called Russia invaded Ukraine was 1149 AD. And it has happened, it was Yuri Dolgoruki, in case anybody's curious. It has Russia, or what was formerly the Muscovy area, has tried to invade Ukraine roughly every 100 years. This is not the first time that the Russians are thinking about using chemical weapons. The Soviet army used chemical weapons at the end of World War II during the Soviet-Ukrainian War on the civilian population in Kyiv. So Ukrainians are also kind of, it's in the Ukrainian genes to be ready for something like this. So when people look at the heroism of Ukrainians or how they are able to stay calm in the face of such terrible adversity and such completely needless suffering, it's in the Ukrainian DNA. And I think that means that we can also get some ideas from the Ukrainians about how this war might end as soon as possible. Ukrainians are, the insightfulness is driven by two things. One is this kind of like collective consciousness of how to defend the country that has been built up since 1149 AD. And two is just the fact that they're on the ground there. They know whether, let's say, the javelins are working or they aren't. They're working very effectively. They know whether the Stingers can actually reach some of the bombers. Some of the bombers they can't, because the bombers fly above the Stingers' highest altitude. So I think that this kind of information is very readily accessible on the ground in Ukraine. So I would certainly recommend reaching out to media outlets in Ukraine, PR professionals in Ukraine. They can find this information extremely quickly, and it's going to be a more reliable source than saying, well, the New York Times reported that, CNN reported that, The Intercept reported that this is happening. So I think, I would strongly recommend pursuing that path. And then if you're interested, if the Crisis Response Committee of Michigan can be helpful in any way, our website is uacrisisresponse.org. That's uacrisisresponse.org. And we do need media and PR help, for sure. So if anybody's interested in helping out on that front, and there's other Ukrainian American organizations that need help as well. So, while I'm speaking to this group, like, yes, we need medical supplies. Yes, we need humanitarian aid. We need funds with which to ship those things to Ukraine. But we also do need media and PR help. So if you're able to, and you have some time and you're able to potentially help us pro bono, definitely reach out to us. And note that you saw me speaking in a panel and that you want to reach me directly if you reach out to the general inbox, and that email will get forwarded to me, and we'll make sure that we can work with you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mykola. I appreciate your insight. One of the other questions I wanted to ask the people that are in Ukraine, like Antonina and Pavlo, is How are you finding a balance between your professional challenges of trying to tell the truth and staying safe? Like, are you finding it difficult to do this? Pablo, you want to go first?
Yes, I can hear you and I can see you. So let me start from 25th of February. The saboteur group was killed in front of my eyes. This was half of a mile. In Kuronivka region, this is, I don't know, maybe 2 miles from the central part of Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. This was my walk from the online on-air broadcasting, because there were no taxi, no public transportations, and I walked to my radio station 10 kilometers, okay, 9 and 5, so it means like 5 miles. 5 miles to and 5 miles from. This was only the second day of Russian aggression, and I've seen the dead bodies, and I have seen the destroyed car, and that was for me the first question to escape with the 82 years old mother with daughter, and my son is fighting in a territorial defense unit somewhere. We do not use the names of the city now, you
Right.
know.
Obviously, yes, please.
But
Please stay safe.
about the journalism, I'm reading a lot of English, French, Spanish, and etc. Media. I'm coordinating for now, I think 4 or 5, but many international journalistic team working in Ukraine. So they are seeking for the stories. I'm trying to organize the stories. I'm trying to help them to show what is going on in Ukraine. So I'm working as a journalist. I'm never trying to fix, even as a fixer, what do they write or what do they show? That not the principle of journalism we need to rethink. We show what we have seen. We write what we have known. But I'm trying to help international journalists, international shooting crews, television crews, radio, even the Spotify, find in their way to find the stories they need. And that's the point of Ukraine. We do have the stories. We do have the stories of surveillance. We do have the stories you can cover, we can cover. And that's, I think, is the crucial part of my work. That's why I'm waking up at 5 a.m. and going to prepare to my online, not only online, but on air broadcasting. We still have 42 cities in Ukraine. So we did have 44, but 2 cities are occupied by Russia. Okay, we have 42 cities, and we do broadcasts. And
Good.
I really know that many of our audience have brought their I don't know, YouTube links or smartphones, and they are listening to us in Dania, in Netherlands, in Germany, in Poland, especially the women with the kids. But I do know that our audience is broader by the territory, because our audience had us as a part of this escape unit. As for me, I had 2 trousers, I don't know, 2 pairs of socks, and the professional microphone, and all the connectors, and all the memory sticks, and all that, but just 2 pair of socks. I think those who brought us to Poland, to Netherlands, to Germany as their first aid, and who are still listening to us, is the main benefit for me as a media person. And I do receive the messages from them, and I think is the most motivating messages. I need to work further. I need to work. I need to do.
Yes, yes, we appreciate all you're doing, for sure. And what about you, Antonina? How are you staying safe?
As for me, it's more simple because I wasn't present at that hotspot like Pavlo was in Kyiv, for example, and now Lubomira right now is in Kyiv region, and really we worry about those people the most. But psychologically, it's also difficult when you scrolling news every hour. Like at the first days, I was afraid to go somewhere without my phone because something might happen and I need to run. Yeah. And so psychologically, it was very difficult. First, I was so stressed that I was working nonstop without any breaks. And then I realized that it is not a sprint, it is like marathon, and I need more power to continue our job because it's very important for me and for my country. So I started to look for some balance in my life, and as my colleagues say, it is not work-life balance, it is war-life balance. Yeah, because you are looking for ways how to stay safe, but at the same time to make all the duties which you are responsible to do.
Right, right. Well, and it's hard when stuff is happening in your country to just sit back and do nothing. Obviously, is not an option. You have a war going on, and I appreciate all you're doing. And even if you are in what's supposed to be a safe area, you just never know, because they, obviously continue to attack the region that they said they weren't going to. The next question, maybe Antonina, you can talk to is. How have you seen the propaganda putting out by Russia affecting your job?
I see this from the first days when we saw the news from Russia that there are no any war and they do not kill civilians, only military. And I knew already that it is not true. And we need to fight with this information in the space because we depend on this, and how it starts. We will see the next wave of information. So now I see that Russian propaganda is like still works. Russian propaganda machine, as we call, and it appeals to compassion because they want to make sanctions weaker. And they use different messages for this, like we are not Putin, we are not responsible for him, so on. And recently we found the document that from like Russian military, they asked to make fake videos about Ukrainian army to show the soldiers are not enough like human. And I want to remind you the case with the Russian propagandist of Ovsyannikova, who showed the poster like "No War" on the TV show. And lots of international media published this because they saw this message which she wanted to actually it did work. She wanted you to think that she represents some Russians who try to fight with their regime against war. She wanted also to support that messages that only the Putin is a bad guy. But it is not Putin who is bombing our cities right now. And we know that over 70% of Russians support him. And are they the part of the brothers nation, like the Ovsyannikova is talking about? I'm just wondering how Italian channel invited her, and she complained that her daughter cannot buy food at the canteen by card, bank card, because it's blocked because of sanctions. While Ukrainian children are going to hide in shelters instead of school, and some of them will never go to school at all because they were killed. And I ask media representatives always be objective. And when you show the oppression, please focus your narrative on the oppressed ones, but not the oppressor's side. And I saw the examples of Russian propaganda in different channels and ways. For example, Deutsche Welle published the interview with mother of a Russian soldier, and just one direct question was about the war, exactly. And in India, they invited my colleague to the show and didn't allow him enough time to talk about war, just asked one random question, and all of other speakers were representing Russian messages. So I see the influence of Russian propaganda even in questions from the journalists when they ask me if that was a Ukrainian missile that killed civilian Ukrainians. And in this question, I see already that the Russian propaganda was working on that area.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. What about you, Pavlo? Have you run into that? Or are you having some PR people from Russia that are pitching you, trying to convince you that what you're seeing is not true?
Yeah, that's the I don't know. That's the one of the main question, because the Russian army is not only Putin. because we need to speak with the Russian community. We tried to do that, but I need to remind you the special dates. In 1932, Hitler has been the leader of Germany, and in 1945, the Germany has been destroyed, and then 20 years everyone in Germany denationalized, sorry, I've tried to find the word, because
Okay.
the Russian propaganda used the same word according to Ukraine. That was my problem. So they told about the nationalization of Ukraine. Sorry, just I think 12 or 13 years of Nazi regime in Germany. But we need to think that's the fourth point I've never wrote in our prediction. We need to go through. I don't know how many generations of Russians we need to proceed to denationalize the Russian society, because I do know my mom is ethnically Russian. She has the sisters living in some areas in Russia. I do know how do they speak,
Right.
and I do hear the wordings from that space. So what do I'm thinking? First, we do not know how long will be the process of the Nazification, the Stalinization, the Russification of this kind of Russia. Because we know only the example of the Germany occupied by the winners of the World War II. Okay, but Hitler was in the power just 12 or 13 years, but we could see the population living at least 100 years in the same informational sphere. So that's not the problem of Goebbels. That's the problem of Russia, of Russian society. I
Right.
do know that everyone or almost everyone of that are the Nazis. You could just fix it. They use pejoratives about all the nations around them. There are no Buryat, no Chukchi, no Tatars, no everyone, because they use the I can't translate it to English, but I do know what the wordings they're using. So we
Right.
need to be prepared to the longest process of the fascization, the denazification of Russia, because
Right.
because we can't understand how to deal with that.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. One of the things that I wanted to get to, we're taking along with a lot of our questions, but maybe we can ask Mykola. I'm kind of curious how you're working with the media here and around the world to try to help the narrative of telling the real truth of what's happening in Ukraine.
Yes. Is there something specific you wanted me to kind of touch on?
No, I'm just curious, who you're speaking with, what kind of inquiries you have coming in, and how that's been working.
Yeah, so we get a lot of inquiries from either local media, national media. People are interested in generally two things. They're interested in how Ukrainian Americans are responding to this emotionally, and they're interested in what kind of work we're doing here to help send humanitarian aid, that kind of a thing.
Right.
Which is and those are very important. I think it's important to contextualize that for an American audience. But
Right.
one of the things that I would like to see happen is, not not putting down the typical American viewer and saying that they're not going to understand if we talk about sanctions or if we talk about this or this weapon system, how Ukraine needs these weapons that have this range, right? I think that there's been, at least I've personally seen a lot of, and I'm not going to throw out any names, but I think that like we don't need to necessarily. I don't know how productive it is for world peace to kind of be preaching to the lowest common denominator of American viewers or American listeners or American readers. I think that at this point we need to trust that if we tell the truth and we say, look, the sanctions have had these and these effects. We need these kinds of, Ukraine thinks that it needs these kinds of sanctions, or that these kinds of weapons are working very well, or these aren't working very effectively, right? If we start talking about like, international affairs topics, right? Like, look how Germany's behaving. Turkey has given Ukraine these drones, right? Like, this is the kind of stuff that, like, while it might be over some readers' heads and some viewers' heads, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be talking about it. That kind of stuff is extremely important. We care about peace. We got to be transparent about that.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. If anybody has questions that's on the line, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A section. We'd be happy to answer them. I have a couple more that I had prepared that I'd like to still go through, and maybe I'll combine them. But Antonina, I'm kind of curious about what you think your role and the journalist's role on the ground in Ukraine is to document war crimes that are happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, thank you very much for this question, because that's really which we want to have, not just inform the society what is going on, but also to have documenting the events and all the war crimes. And we hope that the court, European Court, and the United World Court will go through these crimes and make the right solutions. And we now see different crimes, like starts from the killing civilians and using chemical weapons. And I know the cases when Russian troops showed a white flag, and after that started to shoot people. And that's totally impossible to imagine, like in civilian, in any civilian country during the war, because they ignore any rules, and they are like wild people, they block humanitarian corridors. And they then make videos for Russia that Ukraine do not support Ukrainians, and that's why they struggle, and Russia will help them, and they force their humanitarian aid. And my friend lived in Melitopol, it's Zaporizhian region, and now Melitopol is occupied, and he said that we had enough food, everything was present in shops, but then I saw some buses which are going to our city, and that terrorists asked them to take that aid that they prepared for them. And people originally from the city didn't want to take it because it was just for show. You know, they don't want to help, they just want to make show, to show then that they are so helpful, and they do not show how they were biting people on the demonstration, like just hour before. And when we see fire and bombing our cities during the negotiations with the Russians, and that's also like war crime, because how can you make any negotiations if during this time the people are dying and you do not stop even attacks? So it looks like they cannot even organize their army well. So what the decisions we can receive
Right.
from them?
Yeah, for sure. It's got to be frustrating for sure.
And I hope that thanks to the media who show these cases, we will use these facts later, and we will find everybody who is connected to these crimes.
Right, exactly. That's the key. We did have a couple of questions that came through. The first one's a little bit easier. It's about the pronunciation of Kyiv. And
Yeah,
I think
of Kyiv, I did respond that. I think so. K like K, Y like E. I don't know how to, but
just say it how you
I
say it.
described it. Yes.
Yeah. So you say Kyiv. I think that some of us know or have heard it pronounced like Kiev, but we'll pronounce it Kyiv. He was just asking if that's a Russian pronunciation or, you know, otherwise. But another question that people are asking is, what stories do we feel that are not being covered in the American and Western press? And what can the audience do to help try to promote these stories to get them told in our region? Do you want to go, Pavlo?
For example, my son, he's 25, almost 25, 24, but in September he will be 25 years ago. But some American volunteer came to his unit and he's refused to be included to the Foreign Legion of Ukraine because of age. Sorry, 69 years old is excluded to the Ukrainian.
Right.
But he's working on the trainings of my son, and he has the experience in many conflicts, and he's working with my son to help my son to survive, because
That's
my
awesome.
son has some injured, and unfortunately one that yes, the heads, the people over him told him it's not your problem. That no, that's what that was no solution, but the death is always the disaster. And my son called me as a sanitarian unit person in some territorial defense unit in somewhere of Ukraine. But the American, the adult guy is is teaching him how to deal with it. So
That's great.
there are not so many ordinary Ukrainians speaking English. Okay, my son is speaking absolutely free. That's the possibility. That's
Oh, we
the
would be happy to help
possibility.
share his story.
That's
You know,
the
maybe we can.
possibility for the unit of my son to get the knowledges from
Yeah.
Afghanistan, from Vietnam. If this guy is almost 70 years old, I think he has some experience. I do not know his name, or I do not know his background, but I'm hearing my son, and he's telling me this guy is training us. That's
awesome. Well, maybe
that's
if you can find out his name, we can try to help connect him with some reporters here in America. You know, connecting him through
I
Mykola.
think my son will never tell his name.
Well, that's true. Mykola, it looks like you want to say something.
Yeah, I think that profiling a lot of the Americans that have gone to go fight in Ukraine is an interesting story that Americans can relate to. Second, there's a lot of sexual violence and assault that happens in the territories that are occupied by Russia. And I think that those are also extremely important stories to share with the American audience. Third is the fact that Russia has been doing forced deportations of people from Mariupol and eastern Ukraine into Russia proper. The Ukrainians, as of last week, and Antonina, you might know better this than me, the Ukrainians were estimating 6,000 to 10,000, but the Russians are claiming that over 80,000 have sought refuge in Russia. I have heard rumors from my friends in Ukraine that some of those that have been deported or forcibly repatriated to Russia are being sent to an island off the coast of Kamchatka that is actually disputed territory between Russia and Ukraine, or Russia and Japan. So all the way over in the Pacific
My
Ocean,
gosh.
the Sea of Japan. Yeah. So I think that
Wow.
they are taking people from Ukraine and sending them very, very far away, and making it impossible for them to be able to afford to get back. I mean, it's literally an island. So I think that, I mean, there's some very, very frightening things that are going on. And fourth, I would continue to emphasize the fact that the Russian military is not accustomed to fighting other militaries. They're accustomed to bombing civilians, right? They're accustomed to shooting sitting ducks. Like, that's what they don't go hunting, they shoot sitting ducks, right? So as we saw in Aleppo, when Russia completely flattened this 4,000-year-old town, it's a city of 4 million people. Civilian targets are easy targets, they're not hardened. And so that's what the Russians go after. I mean, it's it's the worst way of going about a conflict. And with Grozny in 1998 and 2000.
One more question, and we're getting real close to the end, and I hate to even stop this program because it's an important topic, but I had a couple more questions. One from the audience, which is, what's the least understood part of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia? You know, as far as the American perspective of what's being told here, what do you think Mykola, do you think there's something that's misunderstood, or any of the panelists?
Yes, Ukraine will win. Ukraine, like Russia will never control Ukraine. I mean, I'm not even being optimistic. I'm just being realistic, right? Like,
Right.
the entire
That's true.
society is mobilized against the Russian invaders, like children
Yeah.
and grandmothers. And having discussions
Yeah.
of like, oh, maybe there's going to be a government in exile. Maybe we can have Ukrainians have their little state. Like, it's never going to happen. If we want to be
Yeah.
realistic about what's going to happen in the future, if Russia is even able to hold some significant amount of territory, they're going to face an insurgency like they've never seen before. They could barely take over Chechnya, which is tiny compared to Ukraine. Like, Russia has no hope here. And the scariest part is that the Russian leadership has been misinformed about the fact that their prospects are so dim. That's scary.
Well,
They
I think, that's one of the
will
things.
destroy our cities. They will continue to destroy our lives. That's the truth. Okay, we are in the challenge, but what do we need to think? We need to think what is the world after this war, and that's what is our question. Sorry, we are in the safe places. You in the America, even the Antonina in some place we could call. We need to think about the new world, because the previous world will never face. The world has been changed.
Well, I think that's the truth right there.
The Cold War. Okay.
Yeah,
It's
no, I
not
understand.
the Cold War.
I hate to cut you off, Pavlo, but we're at a little after 1. And what I wanted to do is to invite anyone that's still on the line and wants to continue the conversation. You can stay on, and we're going to open this up so that everybody can be on the conversation. Mykola, can you maybe give one last pitch as far as what people can do to help you with the here in Michigan? I know we may have some people who are outside of the area, but kind of let us know what they can do to help you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we need help on the media front and on helping us craft these messages into something that's digestible by American audiences and by our lawmakers and elected officials. So if either of those things is something that you can help with, you can reach out to me directly at Murskyj, it's MMURSKYJ @gmail.com. Please do reach out. We need all the help that we can get.
Yep, great. Well, thank you. And Georgie, if you could maybe elevate whoever's still on the call to the panel. I know, just to let you know, panelists, we did have, I think Lloyd Jackson from WJR was on the call, and he may have some questions that he wants to ask.
Will do. I will stop the recording now and move all those over to all those who remain as an attendee. I'll move over as a panelist.
Okay,
Thank you
great. Thank
all.
you so much, everybody.